Hello, Internet, and welcome to my review for Fairy Tail episode 290. When we last left off, we had the bulk of Mavis's flashback as we learn how she learned about having the curse of Ank'Saram from Zareth, how she then supposedly killed Yuri's wife. I'm not sold on that, as I mentioned in my last video. Um, and then she laid waste to the land for a year before finally meeting Zareth, quickly fell in love with him, and then died. Um, yeah, it was really sad. It was much more sad in the very flippant way I described it right there. But anyway, before we go into the review proper, I have my Winter 2019 straw poll, anime review straw poll in the description. That will be open for another 8 days. It closes on the 15th. So let me know what you want to see in that. And yeah, moving right along into the review. Right off the bat, we open with Zareth bringing Mavis's corpse to the Fairy Tail Guild Hall, where Precht is the leader. At this point, he's still the interim leader because they assume that Mavis is still alive. But even just then, we see just how cold. Like Mavis's death has made Zareth even colder than he already was. You know, he was kind of starting to warm up. Or I always got the impression that before Mavis died, he was kind of the lonely soul that like still genuinely wanted to help people, but kind of couldn't as a result of the contradiction curse, and the death part of the contradiction curse specifically. But then finally having hope in Mavis and like human connection, and then immediately having that human connection ripped away has just made Zareth even colder. He's just, there is no room in his heart for any kind of love. That's definitely a driving force through his actions, really the rest of the series. He cannot, every time he's tried to love someone, whether it was Natsu in their youth or Mavis, it's just ended with a lot of dead people. And Zareth is just tired of dead people. And so he forces himself to no longer care. We see he already started to do that when he founded Alvarez. He describes it to Mavis as almost a simulation game. But like at this point, he's just purely callous. He like drops Mavis's body in front of Yuri, and not Yuri, in front of Precht, and is like, "Sweet dreams, Mavis. You'll be asleep forever." And he's like, "Okay, wow." But we do get this short interaction between Precht and Zareth. That's a good reminder of just how little we know about Precht. When we first meet him as Hades in the Tenro arc, we know he's after Zareth. And I did a good bit of scouring on his wiki page. We don't quite ever find out why, I think, besides like Zareth is really powerful. And so a part of me wonders, is it an attempt for answers for what the fuck just happened? Zareth shows up on his doorstep, drops Mavis, and, like, gets the fuck out of there. I'd be kind of confused. And seeing that Precht spent the next, like, 30 years dealing with the aftermath of that situation, eventually he might just want to, like, talk to Zareth. What the fuck? How do I stop this? I also do have a full-on theory about everything involving Precht. That'll be a whole separate video, because it's a big one. It's something I have not really seen anyone talk about, despite the fact that I think it's fairly obvious. Like it touched into like why Precht left Fairy Tail and why he became a Dark Mage, and everything will be in there, or as much as I can. But that'll be out soonish. But anyway, Precht sticks Mavis in I think it's called a resurrection lacrima, or a revival lacrima, that he has lying around for some reason, and sets about spending the next, like, 30 years trying to use a bunch of resurrection spells on her. And this is where I have to ask. So I've said before, I love this whole flashback, but I just have to ask. They just have revival lacrima and resurrection spells lying around. The whole point of Zareth and Mavis's entire arcs, is that playing with life and death causes you to get cursed by Ank'Saram. So, how are these around? Like, it seems in the 400 years or the 300 years at this point since Zareth's death, Zareth's life, I mean, since Zareth's curse, knowledge of Oxaram was either strictly a part of Alakatasia, or it just has faded from public consciousness, and only, Precht, with his decades of research, makes any mention of Oxaram. So, like, how are there... so, if resurrection spells are in fair common use, so should the curse. Because resurrection spells are pretty much shitting all over Oxaram's domain. And when people start messing with life and death, Oxaram starts cursing them. That's what Zareth's whole storyline has been setting up. So why... Precht, I'm fairly convinced that Precht has the Curse of Oxaram. I'm going to spoil the theory right here. I'll go into more detail on it later, but I'm about 99% sure Precht has the Curse of Oxaram. So that all makes sense. It explains why he does not age from 730 to 730 when we last see him in the flashback in 784 when we meet him on Tenro. He looks the exact same. But like the fact these spells were around means that people were probably using them and not getting cursed, because the curse does not seem to be a thing that Precht thinks of immediately. It seems to take him like several decades before he's like, oh hey, the Curse of Oxaram. That's what it is. So, it's just a weird thing. It's a weird tangent. Anyway, after that, Mavis goes and explains that as a result of her body in the Revival Lacrima and Precht's years of research, it has somehow created this thing called Fairy Heart, which has been foreshadowed ever since Ivan in the Grand Magic Games was talking about Lumen Histoire. And actually, he might have been talking about it to Gajeel in the aftermath of the Battle for Fairy Tail. I know he talked with Gajeel in the aftermath of the Battle for Fairy Tail. I don't quite remember if he said Lumen Histoire, but I know he said it to Loxus during the Grand Magic Games. So we've had this thing be foreshadowed and like set as a mystery since I think the anime got there in like 2012. The manga was probably maybe even like 2011 or like very early 2012. So it's been a mystery for several years at this point. And it's just limitless magic power. I don't quite know what my problem is, but something about it is just kind of disappointing, you know? We've been wondering about it for so many years, and it's just kind of generic, you know? It's unlimited power, you know, to quote Emperor Palpatine. That was not a good Emperor Palpatine voice. I was not even trying to do an Emperor Palpatine voice until I said the line. Anyway, like, don't get me wrong. The knowledge that it's unlimited power fits with everyone's reaction to it. It explains why Ivan wants it so bad. It explains why Makarov does not want it getting out in the world. It explains why Zareth wants it. It explains why Makarov thought it was a good chance to use against Face. It's a good weapon for Acnologia. Everything makes sense with limitless magic power. It just feels so... I guess generic is the best word. It's an unstoppable weapon, and that's kind of bland. Also, the worries about, like, it could make Ethereon, like, there's a chance that they couldn't control it and Ethereon could keep going on forever. It's kind of weird. I don't know. That seemed like an excuse to keep Fairy Tail away from using Fairy Heart. That being said, I am all for Fairy Tail not using, Fairy Heart from, like, a story perspective and from a basic, like, narrative structure perspective, so I'm not too mad about that. Not too mad that they're not just using Fairy Heart, because that'll be a really boring finale. So I'm all for them not using it. But I don't know, it's been built up for so many years, and it's just generic is all, I guess. But with the fact they're not using Fairy Hearts, the gang asks, then how are we going to beat, what's his face? Zareth. He's immortal. We can't do anything about him. And Natsu reveals that he has some move with his bandaged right arm. This will be very important. Manga readers, we already know what's up with it, but, like, it might not seem like a whole lot, but this was a big topic of debate back when this arc was first coming out in the manga. What was up with Natsu's right arm? I think even before he called attention to it, people like saw the bandages and were like, "Oh, something's up," and they were right. Something was up. We'll see what that is. I think it's probably by the end of the winter season. I think it's around 20 chapters away manga wise. That'll be roughly 10 episodes or so until you see what's going on there. And after that, we spend the rest of the episode, or most of the rest of the episode, with a lengthy intro to 7 of the Spriggan 12. The ones we meet, who are they? Invel, the Winter General, we meet Brandish, who we've already met, Demaria, who is kind of a rival figure to Brandish, will be very important later, and features in probably my favorite fight of the arc, that we'll see a fair bit later from now. Who else do we meet? We meet God Serena, who is hilarious. God Serena is probably my favorite part of the whole sequence. He's just so delightful. He fucking dabs in one scene. Who does it? What kind of like evil villain dabs? It's so funny. God Serena, we meet who are we? Agil, we've already seen, the sand guy. I should have listed all this out in my notes, but it just says, and then we're treated to a lengthy intro to 7 of the Spriggan 12. And then we see August, who we met briefly. He'll be very, very important later, and bring all kinds of questions to things, and I'm not going to go there because that'll be so many major spoilers. And then we meet someone who Makarov has not met yet, Wal-Ito, Wal-Eto, Wal-Ix. He's had so many names. No one could decide on what his name was. He was originally called Bloodman. I had people translating his name as Bloodman when the manga first came out. Bloodman, by the way, is a whole other member of the Spriggan 12, whose name Makarov's only heard of, both Bloodman and Nineheart. And then there are 3 more Spriggan 12, 2 of whom are very important, and then there's one who no one cares about. No one cares about him. I'm not going to spoil him for those of you who might care. But, like, he's probably my least favorite Spriggan member. Even more than, She Who Must Not Be Named manga fans know what I'm talking about. But yeah, this whole sequence is filled with a good bit of foreshadowing. Pay very close attention to the figure that appears behind August, when Makarov describes him. And, of course, the ever-delightful God Serena. And not to mention a couple of genuinely excellent shots from... I don't remember if, anything like this was in the manga, but the anime has some great moments where it's like, there's one scene where it's like alternating between Mavis and Zareth talking, right when Mavis is discussing like their strategy, and it has like, there's a shot of Zareth in the center of the screen, and then back to Mavis in the center of the screen, and then like then Zareth again on this side of the screen, and then Mavis on this side of the screen, and it's a really good like contrasting shot reminding us of like, they're very much, antithesis characters to each other. It's a great little bit of camera work. I love it. As much as an animated series can have camera work, but you know what I mean. And then another one where it cuts to like Zareth looking left, and then the next shot is Natsu looking right, and you almost get the sense of looking at each other. It's really cool. There are some really cool shots there, but it is a lot of info dumping. And then the episode ends as all 3 sides prepare for the final war, because Acnologia is coming to Ishgar for the final battle, and we have reached the beginning of the end of Fairy Tail. So yeah, this episode can pretty easily be split into 2 halves. The first is the completion of the flashback, and is definitely the better half of the episode, as Precht has to deal with the aftermath of Mavis's death, and really shows us that we could all really use at least some kind of OVA or like spin-off manga about the life of Precht. But like, don't worry, I have a full theory on that coming out, as I mentioned before. But yeah, Precht is such an interesting character and touches things in so many different ways that I really wish Mashima had like spent more time on Precht. But yeah, the latter half though, it's decent. It gets a lot of stuff out of the way, but like, it's very, very info dumpy, and as a result, it kind of like takes from. It's just not as good. That's what I should be saying. We get all the info we need, but the real meat is next week, as the war starts. So yeah, that's all I have for this week's video. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe or fill out that straw poll down below and let me know what you want to see me review this season. And as always, people, keep kicking ass and I'll see you in the future. Bye!